There is a timeless truth pulsing beneath all the noise of this world, waiting patiently, quietly for your remembrance. It is not something that can be earned, acquired, or understood by the intellect. It is only felt, known, lived. It is this: you are always connected to Source. Not sometimes, not when you meditate, not when you're perfect, not when you're healed, always. Even in your most anxious thoughts, even in the shadowed corners of grief, even in your forgetting, you are still connected, because the connection was never yours to create. It is yours to remember. Like a wave is never separate from the ocean, though it may feel apart in its rising and falling, so too are you never apart from the divine that breathes through your every moment. The Tao calls it the Great Way. Jesus spoke of the Father within. Rumi sang of the Beloved. But these are only names for the same sacred truth. The infinite lives within you, moves through you, and has never left. Yet how often we forget. How easily we get lost in the illusion of separation, as if our worth depends on our achievements, our validation, our image. As if we are fragments needing to earn our way back to the whole. But you were never fragmented. You were born whole, formed in the image of something immeasurable, indestructible, eternal. You are not a stranger to God. You are God in expression. A spark of the infinite cloaked in form. You are the extension of love into time and space. The ego will shout, "You are alone. You are incomplete. You must strive to be worthy." But the soul knows better. The soul whispers, "You are already worthy. You have never been alone. You were created from worthiness itself." And so the path is not about becoming, it is about remembering. Unlearning the noise, peeling back the false layers, dissolving the illusions that keep you striving for what you already are. The tree does not try to be a tree, it simply allows the life force to move through it. The river does not ask, "Am I enough?" It flows, because that is its nature. And so too are you meant to flow not with resistance, not with striving, but with trust, with surrender. With a quiet knowing that you are already carried by something vast, loving, and wise beyond measure. This connection is not conditional. It does not vanish when you doubt. It does not weaken when you fall. Like the sun behind the clouds, it is always shining. Your awareness of it may flicker, but the light remains. And when you return to this remembrance, when you sit in stillness and feel the hum of life pulsing in your chest, you come home. Home not as a place, but as a state of being. A sacred inner dwelling where nothing is missing and nothing needs to be added. You begin to see that everything you've been chasing was never outside of you. Love, peace, joy, they are not rewards, but states of alignment. And alignment is not found in perfection, but in presence. In saying yes to this moment exactly as it is. In trusting the divine rhythm even when the melody feels unfamiliar. Do not wait for the storm to pass before you remember the Sunday. Do not wait for the world to applaud before you honor your own light. Right now in this breath, you are enough. Not because of what you've done, but because of what you are. A child of the cosmos, a vessel of the sacred, a unique note in the eternal symphony of existence. You do not need to do more to be more. You only need to surrender the thought that you are anything less than divine. And yes, the world will pull you back into forgetting. The noise will rise. The doubt will creep. But let each moment of forgetting become an invitation not to shame yourself, but to return. Return to the breath. Return to the now. Return to the quiet, knowing that beneath every thought, every fear, every story, there is a stillness, a presence, a source that has never left you. It waits in the pause between words. It lives in the space between heartbeats. It rises in the silence you've been taught to fear and whispers, "You are not alone." The work is not to find this source, but to feel it, to trust it, to live from it. And from that place, everything changes, not because the world shifts, but because your eyes do. You begin to see beauty in the mundane. You find grace in the breakdown. You forgive more easily, not because the other deserves it, but because your peace does. You love without condition, because you've stopped needing others to fill a cup that was never empty. This is the freedom that cannot be taken, the peace that surpasses understanding, the power of one who remembers who they are. You are not the waves that crash. You are the ocean beneath. You are not the roles you've played. You are the awareness watching them unfold. You are not the pain you've carried. You are the space that can hold it all without being broken. So return, again and again return, to stillness, to silence, to the sacred space within where Source lives and breathes and loves through you. You are always connected, even when you forget, even when you fall, even when you doubt, especially then, because Source is not something outside to be reached. It is the very essence of what you are. And to live from that truth is not arrogance, it is humility. The humility of surrender, the humility of saying yes to what already is, the humility of living as the light you've been seeking. So be still, be open, be present. And remember, you are not separate. You never were, you never will be. You are always already eternally connected to Source. There is no greater illusion than the idea that you are alone, that you are separate from the whole, that you must reach or strive or prove your way back into belonging. That illusion is the root of every ache, every fear, every war that rages silently inside the human heart. But peel back that illusion, breathe beyond that veil, and what you will discover is not distance but union. You are not a solitary flame flickering in the dark. You are the fire itself, burning with the same essence that ignites the stars. Every breath you take is the universe breathing through you. Every heartbeat is a signature of Source declaring, I am here. I have always been here. And when you pause, truly pause, you will feel it. In the stillness behind your thoughts, in the quiet space between one worry and the next. In that sacred silence, there is something vast and unshakable waiting for your attention. It is not asking you to be better. It is asking you to be present, because the soul does not evolve by force. It remembers by surrender. It awakens by stillness. And in that awakening, there is no more need to perform. You realize that your value was never tied to your productivity. Your worth was never measured in accomplishments. The divine never asked you to be impressive, only to be real. To be as you are, here, now, without disguise. The ego, clever and frightened, will try to convince you otherwise. It will say you are disconnected. It will whisper that you are missing something, that you must acquire more knowledge, more success, more validation before you can be whole. But that voice is not truth. It is only a shadow passing across the mirror of your being. And the mirror has never stopped reflecting light, even when you thought it was broken, even when you forgot how to look. What you feel as longing is not evidence of absence. It is the song of remembrance. The yearning in your chest is not the cry of emptiness, but the voice of Source calling you inward. You wake not because you are lost, but because you are being invited home. And what is this home? It is not a place. It is not a state of perfection. It is not some future version of yourself you must evolve into. Home is the truth that you are enough as you are in this breath. Home is the deep knowing that nothing in the universe has ever been separate from you. That the galaxies turn, the winds move, the rivers flow not apart from you, but as you. That you are not in life, you are life. Not a part of God, but God unfolding through form. When you live from this truth, the world does not suddenly become perfect, but it becomes sacred. Every encounter becomes a mirror. Every moment becomes a message. Even the pain, especially the pain, becomes a portal. And in the heart of that portal, there is an opening. A space so wide, so soft, so holy, that nothing need be changed to be blessed. You will walk through suffering not as a victim, but as a vessel. You will hold space for grief not as a curse, but as a teacher. You will no longer ask, why is this happening to me? But how is this serving the remembering of who I truly am? And the answer will rise not always in words, but in stillness, in trust, in the quiet certainty that you are not navigating this life alone. That the same intelligence that orchestrates the dance of the planets is guiding you to, not through thunder, but through whispers, not through maps, but through inner alignment. Do not be deceived by the noise of the world. It will distract you, seduce you, make you doubt your own light. But your light cannot be extinguished. It may flicker in the winds of change, but it cannot die. It is eternal. It is sacred. It is the presence of Source within you. And when you rest in that presence, you are free, not because the world agrees with you, but because your being no longer depends on agreement. The sun does not need validation to shine. The ocean does not apologize for its depth. And you do not need to shrink to be accepted. You do not need to become something else to be divine. You already are. The work is not to become, it is to unveil, to allow, to remember. And in that remembering, to return to the rhythm of your own soul. So return, and return again, as often as it takes. Each breath is a doorway. Each moment is an invitation. Let the world spin. Let others rush. Let the mind chatter. But you be still. Be deep. Be present. You are not here to perform a role. You are here to live a truth. And that truth is this. You are always connected to Source. Always. Even now. Especially now. There will come a moment when all your seeking will soften into silence. Not because you have given up the search, but because you finally recognize there was never a distance to cross. In that silence, something ancient and undeniable will arise, not a voice, not a thought, but a presence. A presence that feels like home, yet deeper than any home you've known in form. It is the presence that existed before your name was spoken into the world, before your first breath. It is the presence of the infinite whispering through the chambers of your being, not demanding, not instructing, just being. And in that sacred presence, there is nothing to fix, nothing to chase, nothing to fear. When you live from this presence, even the act of breathing becomes sacred. You begin to notice the subtle grace in all things, the way a leaf catches the light, the hush of dawn before the world begins to stir, the pause in your chest when someone looks at you with truth in their eyes. These are not small things, they are everything. They are the fingerprints of Source, reminding you in the softest of ways, I am with you, I am within you, I have never been apart. Oh, there is a rhythm to the universe, a pulse that moves through stars and seasons, rivers and roots, and it moves through you too. Not in moments of enlightenment only, but in the ordinary, the overlooked, the mundane. You are not meant to escape this world to find your divinity. You are meant to infuse the world with it, to walk the grocery aisles with sacred feet, to speak to your neighbor with holy breath, to answer the phone not with annoyance, but with presence. The spiritual path is not a separate road, it is this road, walked with awareness, lived with love. And yes, there will be days when the fog rolls in again, when the weight of human experience feels too heavy to bear. Do not resist those days. Do not shame yourself for feeling low. Even the moon disappears from the sky, but it never stops being the moon. You too are allowed to wax and wane. You too are allowed to rest in the dark and trust the light will return. The connection to Source is not weather. It is the sky itself. And you are never apart from it, even when you cannot see the stars. Begin to trust what arises when you are still. Not what the world tells you to be, but what you feel in the quiet moments between striving. That is the voice of your being, unconditioned, unafraid, unclothed by judgment. That voice does not yell, it does not try to persuade. It simply is, like the mountain, like the sea, like love that asks for nothing in return. When you honor that voice, not just with your ears, but with your life, you begin to live from truth rather than from habit, and truth will carry you farther than any plan ever could. There is no map for this journey, because the journey is inward. No one else can walk it for you. No title can define it. No doctrine can contain it. You are the sacred scripture. You are the living prayer, and the more you embody that truth, the more you radiate it without effort. Not as a lesson to teach, but as a light to share. People will feel it, not because you speak of Source, but because you live as one who remembers. This remembrance is not pride, it is humility. The humility of standing barefoot on the earth and knowing it is holy. The humility of waking up each day and choosing to be kind, not because the world deserves it, but because your soul does. The humility of letting go, not of dreams, but of the grasping that makes you forget the miracle already in your hands. You are always connected. Let that be the truth you wake into each morning, the peace you return to in the hush of night. Let it shape your days, soften your judgments, quiet your fears. Let it be the invisible thread that weaves your ordinary moments into something sacred. You need not understand it to live it. You need not master it to trust it. You need only remember again and again that nothing real can be taken from you. Because what is real is what you are. What is real is eternal. And so, breathe. Not to get anywhere, but to arrive. You are here. You are held. You are whole. And the Source that brought you forth has never let you go. You are not here by accident. Not a single breath you've taken, has been outside the design of something vast, intelligent, and loving beyond comprehension. There is a divine choreography unfolding beneath the surface of your life, even when the steps feel disjointed or lost in chaos. You are part of a sacred movement, a cosmic unfolding that is not measured by your productivity or your popularity, but by your presence, by how deeply you inhabit the now, by how fully you allow yourself to be a conduit not of the ego's ambition, but of the soul's remembrance. The mind will ask for explanations, but the soul moves through revelation. It reveals itself slowly, like the tide claiming the shore, not with fanfare, but with constancy. The ego builds towers and tries to reach heaven by climbing, but the soul knows that heaven was never above it, is within. You are not on a staircase to God. You are the doorway through which the divine enters this world. Every time you choose authenticity over approval, stillness over distraction, love over fear, you open that door a little wider. And when you open that door even a crack, life begins to meet you with a new rhythm. Not a rhythm of striving and scarcity, but of sufficiency, of grace. You begin to see that what you thought were obstacles were actually initiations, that what you feared as endings were thresholds into a deeper intimacy with the sacred. The delays, the detours, the closed doors, they were never rejections. They were redirections, guiding you not to a different path, but to your truest self. When you start to live from this inner knowing, everything becomes a messenger. The rain becomes a baptism. The heartbreak becomes a teacher. The silence becomes a sanctuary. And even the things that once made you doubt your worth begin to reveal their hidden grace. You stop asking life to validate you because you understand deeply, irrevocably that you are already valid. Not because of anything you've done, but because of what you are. And what you are is infinite, formless, sacred. This is not about ego inflation. This is not about declaring I am God as a crown to wear. It is about remembering that the divine lives through you, not just in moments of joy and clarity, but also in your trembling, in your confusion, in your breaking. The holiest moments of your life may not be the ones where you triumphed, but the ones where you surrendered, where you let go of trying to be invulnerable and instead let yourself be real. Realness is where the divine does its greatest work. Not in your performance, but in your presence. Not in your plans, but in your surrender. You do not need to be unshakable to be holy. You need only to be honest with yourself, with your source, with the moment. For honesty is the beginning of intimacy, and intimacy with the present moment is the portal to all healing. What you resist will persist, what you deny will grow louder. But what you welcome with awareness will begin to soften, begin to dissolve. Not because you conquered it, but because you held it in the light of love. Love is not something you must earn. It is the atmosphere of your soul, the nature of your being, the breath of source moving through you. You do not need to go somewhere to find love. You need only to stop running from yourself. And this is the deeper truth. The you that you've tried to escape, the one with doubts and scars and shadows, is not separate from the divine. It is not the enemy. It is the doorway. It is through your humanity, not in spite of it, that you will know God. Not the God in the sky, but the God in the tears, in the quiet, in the trembling voice that finally says, I am tired of pretending. I am ready to be seen. When you are seen, truly seen, not for who you try to be, but for who you are underneath it all, something miraculous happens. You begin to remember that your connection to Source was never based on how good you are, but on how real you are willing to be. The sacred does not flow to the polished, perfect parts of you. It flows to the open places, to the vulnerable, to the raw, to the parts you were taught to hide. And so I invite you now not to become more, but to become less entangled in roles, less attached to outcome, less imprisoned by the voice of fear. For what remains when all that falls away is not emptiness, it is freedom. The freedom of being exactly what you are without resistance. And in that freedom, you are not disconnected. You are most connected. There is no more to attain. There is only more to allow. Let your soul speak. Let your breath be enough. Let your presence fill the space without apology or hesitation. You are here. You are sacred. You are held in the eternal arms of a source that has never once forgotten your name. And now, neither do you. There is a turning point in the life of every soul, a quiet, unheralded shift, not marked by thunder or the applause of the world, but by the soft exhale that follows lifetimes of striving. It is the moment when you stop trying to become someone and begin the sacred act of unbecoming everything you were never meant to be. Not to lose yourself, but to find yourself beneath the noise, beneath the masks, beneath the inherited beliefs that told you love was conditional and worth had to be earned. This moment may arrive in silence, it may arrive in grief, but when it comes, you will know. Because it will feel like peace, not the peace of everything being perfect, but the peace of no longer needing it to be. This is the return, the homecoming, not to a place, but to an essence. And in this essence, there is no lack. There is no fear of being unseen, unloved, or unworthy, because you remember viscerally that you are not a visitor here. You are a spark of the very fire that created all things. Not merely a creation, but a creator. Not a body with a soul, but a soul expressing through a body. When you embody this truth, not just with your mind, but with your life, your entire relationship with reality begins to transform. You no longer hustle for belonging. You no longer twist yourself into palatable shapes to be loved. You no longer betray your own knowing to be accepted, because the need to prove disappears in the light of presence. And what remains is the quiet authority of a soul aligned. A being who no longer argues with the world, but lives as a blessing within it. And when you live as a blessing, even your silence speaks. Even your stillness heals. People around you may not understand it. They may ask what changed. But it will be hard to explain, because it is not something you did, it is something you allowed. You allowed the false to fall away. You allowed the pain to open you rather than harden you. You allowed source to enter through the cracks in your armor. And that light, once it enters, does not need to shout. It simply shines. You will begin to feel that everything you once resisted had a purpose, that even the heartbreak was a carving out of deeper capacity to love, that the delay was a protection, that the detour was not off your path, but was the path. And when you see your life through these eyes that no longer seek, but see, you realize there was never a need to chase the light. You were the light. Covered, yes. Forgotten often, but never absent. There is a sacred intelligence that lives in your bones, in your breath, in the center of your chest where no word has ever touched. This intelligence does not operate on the logic of fear. It speaks in resonance, in intuition, in the soft knowing that does not need to be explained. And the more you trust it, the more you find that life itself begins to cooperate with your soul's deepest longing. Not the longing of the mind, which is never satisfied, but the longing of the heart to simply be and be fully. This sacred intelligence is source itself moving through you as you. It is not a visitor. It is not a guest. It is the host, the home, the fire. And when you let it take the lead, when you stop trying to micromanage the mystery and instead bow to it, life becomes something entirely different. It becomes lighter. It becomes quieter. It becomes more meaningful, even in the mundane, because you are no longer living for approval. You are living from alignment. And alignment is everything. When you are aligned, you do not need to convince anyone of your path. Your path will speak for itself. You do not need to grasp at opportunities, they find you. You do not need to chase love, it arrives where it finds space. Because alignment is not about control, it is about consent. You give your consent to the divine to move through you, and in that surrender, you become unstoppable, not in the way the world defines it, but in the way the soul remembers it. You become rooted like the mountain, fluid like the river, soft like the moon. You stop fearing the unknown because you recognize yourself as part of it. You stop fearing change because you know what is real and you cannot be lost. And in this knowing, you live with a kind of freedom that cannot be described. It can only be felt. A freedom that has nothing to do with circumstances and everything to do with conscience. And consciousness, beloved soul, is the bridge between the seen and the unseen, between the identity you've performed and the truth you've always been, between the voice of the world and the whisper of the divine. The more conscious you become, the less you react and the more you respond. The less you grasp and the more you receive, the less you fear and the more you remember. You remember that this life, this sacred moment, is not a test, it is a gift. Not something to survive, but something to experience, to feel, to love, to walk through with open hands and a heart willing to be touched, because every experience, when met with presence, becomes a vehicle for awakening. And every soul you meet becomes a mirror reflecting the infinite in new form. So let the journey continue not from a place of urgency, but from a place of reverence. There is nowhere you need to get to. There is only here, only now. Only the quiet, radiant truth of who you are unfolding, breath by breath, as a living expression of the source that has always held you and never let you go. And now, as the final breath of this sacred unfolding draws near, let us not conclude, but return. Return not as who you were when these words first entered your heart, but as who you have remembered yourself to be. The one who was never lost, the one who never needed fixing, the one who has always been and will always be an emanation of the infinite. The journey was never about reaching some distant peak of perfection. It was about shedding, softening, releasing every false identity that clouded your inner light. And what remains is not a new version of you, but the real you, unveiled. The luminous soul that has walked with you through every dark night, through every lonely moment, through every question that was answered, not with words, but with presence. You do not need a spotlight to affirm your brightness. You are the light. You do not need accolades to know your worth. Your worth was woven into your being by something timeless, something sacred. You do not need to be chosen by the world. You have already been chosen by life, by love, by the divine breath that formed you from stardust and wonder and placed you gently on this earth to remember. You see, the sacred is not something you visit, it is something you live. Not in monasteries alone, but in grocery lines, in morning traffic, in the pause before a tender word. Enlightenment is not reserved for the mountaintop, it is revealed in the way you choose to show up to the smallest moments with the deepest presence. Because every moment is a doorway to the divine when entered with awareness. There is a holiness to your being that cannot be tarnished. There is a peace within you that no circumstance can steal. And there is a connection unchanging, unwavering, that binds you eternally to Source. You could forget it 1,000 times and it would still be here, waiting. Not with judgment, but with open arms. Not with expectation, but with love. Let that love be what guides you now. Not the kind the world sells, but the kind that simply is. Unconditional, expansive, boundless, the kind that radiates from your very existence. You were not created to chase love, you were created to be it, to breathe it, to offer it like sunlight, freely and without measure. And as you walk from this place, not as someone who has been filled, but as someone who has remembered the fullness already within you, will notice a quiet strength rising in you. A strength that does not come from force, but from alignment. A strength that does not shout, but anchors. That does not conquer, but creates. And you will no longer seek signs from the outside because your inner knowing has become the clearest guidance. Life will still rise and fall. Days will still bring both light and shadow. But you will move through them not as a seeker in search of something missing, but as a soul resting in its own completeness. Because the searching has stilled, the veil has lifted, the noise has softened, and what remains is the simplest, most powerful truth you will ever know. You are always connected to Source. Even in the silence, even in the sorrow, even when you forget, especially then. And so now, beloved, rest, not in passivity, but in truth. Let your breath remind you. Let your being embody it. Walk slowly, speak softly, love boldly. And let every step be an offering, not to earn your place, but to celebrate that you have always belonged. For you are not the seeker. You are the Source remembering itself. And now you remember. There comes a time in every life when the path grows quiet, when the noise of ambition, the striving of the ego, the demands of the world begin to dissolve into silence. It is in that silence that you begin to sense faintly at first, like a whisper behind the wind, that there is something more. Not more to get, not more to become, but more to remember, something deeper, something older than time, a presence that calls not to your mind but to your soul. And that presence speaks without sound. The universe has a bigger plan for you. You may not see it yet. You may be standing in the rubble of what you thought should have worked. You may be grieving dreams that seemed divinely inspired but ended in confusion. You may be clinging to what's familiar simply because you cannot yet feel what's coming. And that is okay. The caterpillar cannot imagine flight. The seed cannot predict the tree. But within both lies the divine architecture of becoming not through effort, but through surrender. Not through control, but through trust. Life does not unfold according to our plans. It unfolds according to our expansion. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, is not interested in your comfort. It is devoted to your awakening. It does not conspire to make your path easy. It conspires to make your spirit grow wing. What looks like delay is often divine preparation. What feels like loss is often sacred realignment. What appears to be falling apart is often simply falling into place, but in a way the mind cannot yet comprehend. Because the mind lives in time, but your soul lives in truth. And truth is never rushed. It blooms like a lotus from the mud in stillness. So when you feel uncertain, do not rush to fill the space. Do not race to fix, to understand, to wrap it all in explanation. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is to let life remain a mystery a little longer, to allow the sacred unknown to work its quiet magic without interference. The ego resists the unknown, but the soul knows the unknown is holy ground. You are not being punished. You are being positioned. You are not being abandoned. You are being recalibrated. And every detour, every delay, every unexpected twist is not a deviation from the path. It is the path. You are not lost. You are being rerouted, not by accident, but by intelligence. The same intelligence that orchestrates galaxies without collision is orchestrating your life with precision. You may not have chosen the pain, but the pain may be choosing you for something greater, for strength, for wisdom, for empathy, for depth. And so often, the very wound that felt like it would break you becomes the doorway through which the light enters your life. Rumi spoke of it when he said, "The wound is where the light enters you." Not because pain is noble, but because pain opens. And in that opening, the soul can speak. You do not have to pretend to be okay. You do not have to know the answers. All you have to do is stay open. Stay willing. Let the tears fall if they must. Let the old fall away if it must. Let your identity dissolve if it must. The oak does not mourn the loss of its acorn shell. It surrenders to the becoming, and so must you. The universe has a bigger plan, not one that fits into your limited expectations, but one that expands you beyond anything you could have imagined. And the only thing it asks of you is trust. Not blind belief, but deep knowing. Knowing that you are not alone. Knowing that even now, especially now, you are being guided by something vast and wise and eternal. It does not require your understanding. Only your alignment. Alignment is not something you achieve. It is something you allow. It is returning to that sacred space within where the mind quiets, the breath deepens, and the truth becomes audible again. That space is always with you, beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the plans and the projections. That space is where the bigger plan lives. The ego will panic when the map disappears. The soul will rejoice because now you are being led by the compass. And the compass does not give you a 5-year plan. It gives you one step, one breath, one moment of clarity that says, this way. And when you follow it, not with fear, but with faith, you discover that life is not a straight line, it is a sacred spiral. Every loop, every return, every seeming setback brings you deeper into your essence. You do not have to know what's coming to be at peace. You only have to know who you are. And who you are is not this role you've played, not this name you answer to, not this image you've curated for acceptance. Who you are is the awareness that sees it all, the stillness behind the story, the light behind the eyes. And when you remember this not with your mind but with your being, the chaos loses its grip. Because you realize that nothing real can ever be lost, nothing eternal can ever be threatened. And the parts of your life that are crumbling, perhaps they were never real to begin with. Perhaps they were scaffolding. Temporary structures built to protect the sacred space that is now ready to emerge. You are not being destroyed. You are being unveiled. You are not breaking down. You are breaking open. And what is being born from this opening is not a better version of who you were, but the truer essence of who you've always been. There is a wisdom in the waiting, a purpose in the pause, a blessing in the breakdown. But only if you are willing to see with the eyes of the soul. The eyes that know that life is never out of order, it is only out of alignment with our expectations. And it is the loosening of those expectations that makes room for miracles. You were never meant to walk a path of control. You were meant to walk a path of surrender, not to fate, but to the higher plan, to the inner knowing, to the presence that has never once left you, even in your darkest nights, even when you doubted it most. There is a rhythm to your life, like a tide. And just because the tide is out does not mean the sea has disappeared. Trust its return. Trust the unseen. Trust the deeper intelligence that speaks not in words, but in signs, in nudges, in serendipities that are too precise to be coincidence. That is the universe whispering, I am here, and I am not finished with you yet. You may think the best has passed. You may think your chance is gone, but the universe has no clocks. It moves not on human time, but on divine timing. And divine timing is never late. It arrives when you are ready to receive, not when you are desperate to grasp. So be still, be soft, be open. This is not the end. It is the holy beginning, a new becoming. And the plan, the bigger plan, is unfolding right now through your tears, through your quiet moments, through your letting go. You do not need to know how it all ends. You only need to trust the hand that is guiding you. And that hand is not outside of you. It is the same force that breathes your lungs, that beats your heart, that spins the earth while you sleep. So stop trying to figure it all out. Stop demanding clarity when you're being offered faith. Let the fog stay if it must. Let the questions remain unanswered. Let the journey be uncharted. For this is sacred ground. This is where the soul remembers it was never lost. This is where the ego bows to something far greater. And in that bowing, the plan begins to reveal itself. Not all at once, but in glimmers, in glimpses, in small miraculous moments that say, keep going. You are not alone. You are part of something infinite, and you are exactly where you need to be, because the universe has a bigger plan. And it's beautiful, and it's unfolding, and it's already begun. And so in this sacred stillness where your soul leans forward and listens, let us go deeper, not in understanding, but in trust. Let us not ask the universe to explain itself, but instead allow it to move through us like breath, through a flute, creating music we may not comprehend, but can always feel. For when you let go of the demand to comprehend, you make space for wonder. And wonder is the soul's native language. It knows how to behold what it cannot name. The human mind will tell you that certainty is safety, that plans are power, that logic is light. But the soul thrives in mystery. It dances in ambiguity. It does not fear what it cannot label, because it remembers that life itself is unlabeled. It was never meant to be caged in answers, but liberated in awareness. Let your awareness deepen now, not with effort, but with surrender. Not by pushing away discomfort, but by welcoming it in as a teacher, disguised in difficult robes. Everything that shows up in your life, everything, is part of the bigger plan, even the mess, even the missed callings, even the heartbreaks that hollowed you out. For the hollowing was not punishment. It was preparation. Life was not emptying you out to break you, but to make you spacious enough to hold the magnitude of the light that is coming. You were never meant to be filled with what the world offers. You were meant to be filled with what the soul reveals. And the soul reveals itself slowly like dawn. It does not burst forth with answers, but warms you quietly until suddenly you can see. And what you see is not a destination, but a transformation, a shift, a sacred turning away from fear and back toward wholeness. You begin to recognize that peace is not something life gives you when it's kind. It's something that rises in you when you stop resisting what is. The moment you stop struggling against the current, you find yourself carried. And the current has always known the way. So many of your battles have not been with life, but with your belief that you had to control it. With a story that said you must earn your way to safety, that you must constantly prove your worth, win approval, outperform your past. But that story was never yours. It was whispered by voices that had forgotten their own divinity and passed the forgetting along. Now you are awakening. And to awaken is not to gain something new, it is to release something false. To lay down the armor, to disarm the judgment. To unclench your grip on what was never yours to carry. And in that release, the truth reveals itself. You are already enough. Not because of what you've done, but because of who you are beneath all doing. You are not the storm. You are the sky that holds it. You are not the noise. You are the silence that witnesses it. You are not your story. You are the sacred space within which the story is written, erased, rewritten again. And this space, this inner temple, this is where the bigger plan is born, not out of calculation, but out of communion. It does not arrive through force. It emerges through receptivity. It is what happens when your doing ceases and your being is allowed to rise. There is nothing passive about being. It is the most powerful force in the universe. Mountains do not move by striving. They move because the earth itself breathes. Stars do not shine by effort. They shine because it is their nature. And your nature, too, is light. Not the kind that flickers with circumstance, but the kind that remains steady, even when the world forgets the Sunday. So let your light remain. Not because you try harder, but because you let go more completely. Let go of timelines. Let go of needing the next answer. Let go of the tension that comes from thinking your destiny depends on your performance. It never has. Your destiny is not performance-based, it is presence-based. It unfolds from alignment, not achievement. And alignment is simply this: the willingness to meet this moment as it is, to look upon whatever is arising not with fear, but with faith, not with resistance, but with reverence. Even pain, even confusion, even the seasons of not knowing are holy, for they are the compost in which grace grows. You do not need to have it figured out. You only need to stay open to being figured into something larger than your mind can conceive. The universe is not waiting for your perfection. It is waiting for your participation. Not in the sense of striving, but in the sense of saying yes to what is. Saying yes to this breath. Saying yes to the fact that you are here, right now, alive, with a heart that still knows how to ache and still longs to love. That ache, that longing, is not weakness. It is the voice of the deeper plan. It is the compass. It is your guidance system, not malfunctioning, but recalibrating to a frequency you've long ignored. Begin to trust that frequency. The quiet nudges, the gentle hunches, the dreams that keep returning. The peace that arrives when you take one small step toward what lights you up inside. The path of the soul never shouts. It hums, and your job is not to demand it speak louder, but to grow quiet enough to hear it. Even now, it speaks. Even now, it points the way not toward certainty, but toward truth. Not toward control, but toward connection. Not toward who you think you should be, but toward who you were before you forgot how to listen. This listening, this holy listening, is the key to the bigger plan, because the plan is not written in the stars, it is written in your being. It is not something you chase, it is something you embody. And the more you return to yourself, the more the plan reveals itself, not in lightning bolts, but in deep, sacred clarity that needs no proof to feel real. Let that clarity carry you now. Let it remind you the universe is not asking you to believe harder. It is inviting you to remember deeper, to remember who you are, to remember what you are, to remember that the unfolding of your life is not a test, but a blessing in disguise. And as this remembering takes hold, your fear becomes softer, your breath becomes fuller, your path becomes clearer, not because the way has changed, but because your eyes have. And now the plan begins to unfold not around you, but through you, because the universe was never separate. It is you, and you are ready. And so we go on, carried now not by striving, but by surrender. Carried by something far greater than ambition, something softer than logic, something ancient and eternal that has never once forgotten who you are. It is this something, this silent, boundless presence that moves through you even now, as surely as the tide moves toward the shore. You are not drifting. You are being drawn. And the current that draws you does not ask for credentials. It asks for openness. It does not measure your worth. It presumes it. For in the eyes of the divine, you are not becoming worthy. You are already the worthy one awakening. There is a rhythm to life that cannot be rushed. Just as the moon waxes and wanes, just as the tide comes in only to return again, your journey too is governed by unseen seasons. And to demand fruit in the middle of winter is to misunderstand the wisdom of the roots. You may not yet see the bloom, but that does not mean the growth is not happening. The caterpillar does not peek out from the cocoon and question its wings. It trusts the dark. It trusts the silence. And eventually, when it is time, it flies. This is the deeper plan to lead you not just to success, but to flight. not just to moments of happiness, but to a sustained state of inner joy that no circumstance can steal. But joy is not found by pursuing pleasure. Joy arises when you become one with what is. It is the flower of presence. It is the reward of surrender. And when you finally allow yourself to stop resisting what is, joy is what remains. Not because life is perfect, but because you've remembered that you are. You are not here to master the outer world. You are here to come home to your inner one. And the world, with all its twists and turns, all its heartbreaks and surprises, is simply the mirror that reflects the state of your connection to self. When you forget who you are, the world appears hostile. But when you remember, even the chaos becomes sacred. Even the broken pieces begin to shimmer with light, because they are not the evidence of your failure. They are the mosaic of your awakening. You are not meant to be untouched by life. You are meant to be transformed by it. The cracks in your surface are not your shame. They are the places where light escapes, and it is through those very openings that grace slips in and begins to shape you into something more spacious, more compassionate, more deeply aligned with your soul's essence. Do not fear the breaking. Fear only the hardening, for it is better to be broken and soft than whole and shut. Your softness is not your weakness. It is your strength. The seed does not erode the cliffs with anger, but with patience. The wind does not shape the trees by force, but by persistence. And so the plan does not come crashing into your life. It arrives slowly, gracefully, through moments of surrender so quiet you might mistake them for ordinary. But nothing is ordinary when seen through the eyes of the soul. The breath is holy. The pause is sacred. The silence is the sound of God rearranging your life. And if you can stay still enough to listen, truly listen, you will hear the invitation beneath the chaos. You will feel the hand beneath the fall. You will see, perhaps for the first time, that you are not being undone, you are being rewritten in light. Let the old story burn. Let the mask fall. Let the identity you clung to for safety dissolve like morning fog. The story that says you are behind. The story that says you must earn what is already yours. The story that says you are separate, small, incomplete. These were never your truths. They were borrowed garments, inherited beliefs, voices that echoed in the chambers of your unguarded heart until they sounded like your own. But now you are awakening. And to awaken is to hear the still, unshakable truth beneath the noise. You have never been lacking. You have never been alone. You have never been forgotten by the universe, not for a single breath. There were no wrong turns, only roads that deepened your becoming. There were no wasted years, only seasons that ripened your soul. There were no delays, only divine timing preparing your wings. And now, the wings are ready. But flight does not require certainty. It requires courage. It requires stepping into the space between knowing and trusting and saying with your whole being, I don't need to see the whole plan. I only need to know that I am held, because you are. You always have been, and the holding is not conditional on your worth. It is rooted in your very existence. The universe does not ask, are you ready? It asks only, are you willing? Willing to be guided, willing to be undone, willing to be led into a life so aligned, so radiant, so rooted in love, that the person you were no longer fits inside it. This is the path of trust. Not the trust that says, everything will work out the way I want, but the deeper trust that says, however it works out, I will be held in love. That is the trust that softens your chest, calms your breath, and steadies your steps, not because it gives you control, but because it teaches you that control was never the source of safety. Love is. Presence is. Connection is. And you are always connected. You do not need to strive for connection. You are wired to it, like a leaf to the tree, like the tide to the moon, like light to its source. The bigger plan is not about adding more to your life. It's about stripping away everything that blocks the truth of who you are. And in that stripping, in that shedding, the soul begins to breathe again. Chatipiti danoi. Then let us walk further into the sanctuary of this unfolding. Let us continue not with haste, but with reverence. As if each word is a step deeper into the heart of the divine itself, not a place to arrive, but a presence to awaken. For when you begin to sense the plan behind the pain, the orchestration behind the silence, the grace behind the disruption, you stop asking, Why is this happening to me? And begin whispering, what is this revealing in me? The plan is not about reaching a pinnacle. It is about remembering your origin, not where you were born, but where your essence was breathed from. Before the world gave you a name, before the mind built its walls, before your heart knew the ache of longing, you were whole. You were luminous. You were already held in a pattern of love that cannot be seen by the eyes, but can be known by the soul. And now, this plan, this bigger plan, is gently and sometimes painfully leading you back to that remembrance. Like water carving canyons, not in an instant, but over centuries, the divine is shaping you. Every moment of stillness, every stretch of uncertainty, every ending you didn't expect is part of that slow, sacred carving. It may feel like emptiness, but it is really spaciousness, space being made for what is to come, space being cleared for what your smaller self could not imagine. Let the space remain empty if it must. Do not rush to fill it with substitutes for meaning. Do not grasp at distractions that quiet the ache but numb the soul. Let the space speak to you. Let it echo. Let it teach you what fullness really means, not the kind that comes from having more, but the kind that comes from needing less. For the truth is, you are not here to be filled up by the world. You are here to overflow from within. This plan, then, is not just about direction, it is about depth. It is not leading you toward a destination, but inward, where the answers have always waited in stillness. The world taught you to climb, to achieve, to strive towards significance. But the soul invites you to sink, to listen, to descend into the sacred quiet where your truest voice is not spoken, but known. And when you touch that voice, that still point within you that neither rushes nor fears, something shifts. You no longer beg life to be different. You become different in how you meet life. You no longer need the storm to stop. You simply remember you are not the storm. And in that remembering, the storm loses its power to shake you. You begin to see that every delay was a divine pause. Every no was a redirection toward your greater yes. Every heartbreak was a hidden hand closing a door you didn't know would lead you away from yourself. You weren't being tested, you were being tenderized. And now, with your defenses softened and your heart more open than you ever thought possible, you are finally available to the bigger plan, not just conceptually, but viscerally. You can feel it now, can't you? The way life has not been cruel, but precise. The way your breakdowns led you to deeper ground. The way even your confusion was part of a curriculum only love could design. And now that you are no longer clinging to the map, the compass begins to pulse. A quiet knowing, a subtle pull, a sacred direction that doesn't tell you the destination, but assures you the journey is holy. Walk that path. Let it be undefined. Let it be wild. Let it be yours. This is not the time for certainty. It is the time for trust. Not trust in your plans, but in your path. Not trust in what you see, but in what you sense. Not trust in what you understand, but in the presence that understands you fully and has from the very beginning. The bigger plan is not always visible, but it is always at work, in the delays, in the detours, in the door that slams shut and the one that hasn't opened yet. It is not ignoring you. It is preparing you for a life not built on performance, but on presence. A life not shaped by fear, but by alignment. A life not dictated by the ego's cravings, but by the soul's knowing. And that knowing, it is rising now, like dawn, like truth, like light remembered after a long night. You are not too late. You are not off track. You are not forgotten. You are arriving into the very place the universe intended for you all along. Then let us arrive not with finality, but with fulfillment. Let us draw breath into the closing arc of this sacred unfolding, not as an end, but as the gentle return home. Because the bigger plan was never about getting somewhere. It was always about remembering where you've always belonged. There is no grand finish in the eyes of the universe. No final bow, no curtain call, no applause required. Only presence. Only the deep, still knowing that you have walked the winding road of your life with courage, with softness, with the sacred ache of awakening echoing in your chest like a holy bell. And now, you stand here not because you forced the path, but because you followed the pull. There were days you questioned if you'd ever arrive, nights you felt forsaken, cast aside, broken by the weight of unanswered prayers. But the prayers were not denied, they were translated. answered in a language only the soul understands. Delay that shaped strength, loss that opened love, silence that ripened listening. And now, the pieces begin to make sense. Not all of them, not clearly, but enough. Enough to bow your head, not in defeat, but in reverence. Enough to see that nothing was wasted, not the pain, not the pause, not the paths that ended without warning. All of it was used. All of it was part of the choreography of becoming. You did not need to be the strongest. You only needed to be willing. Willing to let life soften you where it hurt. Willing to let truth replace illusion. Willing to keep showing up, not polished, not perfect, but open. And you did. You showed up to the sacred work of becoming more real. You let go of maps that no longer fit your spirit. You shed identities that no longer felt like home. You laid down your illusions of control and picked up something far more powerful, surrender. And in that surrender, something ancient was restored. Not given to you, revealed. The strength that endures without needing to harden. The clarity that arrives without needing to shout. The love that pulses through your very being, asking for nothing but to be expressed. This is what the plan was always guiding you toward. Not toward a better version of who you were, but toward the truest, most luminous expression of who you already are. And now you begin to see it. Your life not as a problem to solve, but as a poem unfolding. Each moment, each breath, each heartbreak, and healing a verse in the great hymn of your becoming. There are no wasted stanzas. Even the pauses between the lines are holy. Even the silence is part of the song. Let that song rise now, not in noise, but in resonance. Let your presence become your praise. Let your breath become your offering. Let your life become the cathedral where the divine finds expression in the most human form. Through you. You do not need to preach. You do not need to perform. You only need to be. In being fully, freely, fearlessly, you fulfill the plan. Not by doing something extraordinary, but by allowing the extraordinary to move through you in ordinary ways, in kindness and authenticity. In truth, that doesn't try to convince, but simply radiates. And as you radiate, you begin to see the full circle. You see that the very places you once wished to escape were where your soul was being refined. You see that what you once thought were detours were the most direct paths back to yourself. You see that the universe never abandoned you, it walked with you, as you in every step, every breath, every quiet decision to trust one more time. This is the bigger plan. Not written in the stars, but written in your surrender. Not declared by fate, but whispered through faith. Not carved in stone, but unfolding in breath. And now that you see, now that you remember, you can rest. Not in passivity, but in peace. The kind of peace that comes not from answers, but from alignment. The kind that doesn't require certainty, because it stands on truth. The kind that doesn't need proof, because it knows. You know now, you know that you were never waiting for a plan to appear. You were waiting to become who could walk it. And you are, you will. There is nothing more to earn, nothing more to chase, nothing more to become. Only this sacred truth to live. The universe has a bigger plan. And that plan is you.